What's going on, everybody? It's Barmine from Barmine Tech, and today we're going to be covering 20 commands that you must know if you use the Linux operating system. So you might already be a Linux user, or you might be new to using Linux, but in here we're going to cover 20 commands that you need to know, and it's going to make using Linux so much easier by understanding how to use these commands and when to use them and stuff like that. So let's get right into it. So as always, when I do videos like this where we're following commands or anything like that, I try to write up a repo on GitHub. So of course I made one, and it's actually going to cover a lot of the commands that you should know, and it's going to cover all the 20 that we're going to use for this video. So it does have all 20 commands. It's all written out. Some of them have examples if they're not straightforward. It has a description of what they do. So no more beating around the bush. Let's get right into it. So the first command that you're going to need to know if you're using Linux is sudo. So sudo is a command that lets you have administrative rights. It usually does it for about a 15-minute session. It might change if you, configure your computer a different way. But you're going to use sudo in, usually if you're doing like sudo apt update, that'll be a way you use sudo. Or it might be, you might be trying to write to a root directory, and if you're not a root user, you would have to do it. So if like you're writing to the etc directory, you would have to do sudo touch, we'll say file in the etc directory. If you were just to touch a file into the etc directory, it wouldn't let you. It would say that you're not a super user, and you would have to switch into a root user or anything like that. So that's when you would use sudo. The next one we're going to cover is cd. So cd is super helpful. You're going to pretty much use it all the time if you're using the command line version of Linux. So anytime you need to switch between directories or folder structures, you're going to need to use cd. So if I see, let's do this, we'll do dir, and we'll see that I'm in file, so we'll do cd backspace, and that brings me back to the home directory. So if I look in here, I'm in the slash directory. So if I do dir again, and let's say I want to go into dev, I can do cd dev, and now I'm in the dev directory. So that's how we would switch back and forth between our directories. So our next command is going to be ls. Ls is a really important one you're going to use. It's going to make it so it lists the structure. That's what ls stands for. And it's going to show everything that's in a directory that you're working with. So right now I'm in the dev directory, and if I ls it, it's going to list out the whole structure or all the files and subdirectories that are inside of it, so we could see everything that's in there. You could also do stuff like, we're going to go out into a smaller directory, so we'll do that. So let's go back, and then we could do ls-l, and it'll actually show us the file permissions of all of these directories. So I'm back in the slash directory, and it's going to show me that dev has these properties. So it can show you who has read, write, execute, the number scheming for the permissions, and it's going to show you what time they were written. So ls-l is a good command to use. You're going to probably use it a lot in Linux, and ls is something you're going to use all the time when you're trying to look through your directories. The next command that's going to come in very handy, so as you're navigating through different directories, you might get lost where you are, or you might be trying to write to a file structure and you need to know where you are. Like if you're trying to mount a disk, you might be trying to mount the disk to a certain path, and you would need to know that path. And the easiest way to do it is using the pwd command. So pwd is present working directory, and it's going to show you the present directory you're in. So as you can see, I just did pwd, and here I'm in the slash directory. So if I cd into home, and I do it again, it's going to tell me I'm in slash home. So every time you do pwd, it's just going to keep showing you where you are. So you can keep going around, and it'll keep telling you where you are. It's a command that comes in handy when you need to have an idea of what directory you're working with. Like I said, if you're writing to a file structure or anything like that, good to know. So the next command that's really good to know is cat, and cat's short for concatenate. And pretty much what cat's going to be doing is it's going to help you see what's in a file without having to open up a file and navigate into it. It also could help you combine different files into one more file. So you can see I just made this new file called Barmine Tech. I'm going to cat Barmine Tech, and you can see it's going to tell me what's in the actual file. So instead of having to do nano Barmine Tech, open up nano, I can just see what's in there. I could have just catted it, and then it tells me the contents of a Barmine Tech. So I'll clear that out. And another cool thing you could do with cat is, let's say I have file 1 and file 2, so we'll do nano file 1 txt, and I'll do Barmine, save that, and then we're going to do nano file 2.txt, and I'll do tech, I'll save that. Now I could do cat file 1 .txt and file2.txt into, I'll do a little caret, file3.txt. And now by cat file3, it's going to combine the two lines, and there's Barmine text. So it took the first line from file 1 to file 2, and it put it into one big file. So it's another cool little trick you could do in cat. Helps if you're working with multiple files and you're trying to join them together. You can do stuff like that. For number 6 on our commands that are really good to know in Linux is the cp command. So if I list out my files, I have the Barmine tech file, so I could do cp barmine tech, and I could put it into Barmine tech 2. So I list out the files. You can see I have Barmine tech, and then I copied it to Barmine tech 2. So if I do cat Barmine tech, I have Barmine tech, and then if I do cat Barmine tech, you can see I have Barmine tech again. So I just copy the file over and put it in the same directory, but you could also do it in different ways. If you look, I have the example over here that you can take file 1, you can copy it to file 2, and you could actually put it into a directory that's different. So if you want to move it from the slash directory into the documents directory, you could do something like that with this command too. For number 7, we have mv. mv is similar to cp. It's also going to be able to copy folder. It's going to be able to copy files, but you can also are going to be able to move files with it. So we can do it similarly with mv. So let's see, I have Barmine tech, and I'm going to use mv to move it into the slash home directory. So I'm going to use mv Barmine tech, and I'm going to put it into slash home. So now if I cd into slash home, you can see the Barmine tech file is in there. So nice thing to use with mv. Really simple way to move around files. It can be a little tricky with the directories. Just make sure you type them out right, and that's where pwd comes in handy, so you know which directory you're trying to move it into. You could always do pwd, and then you can copy your directory, and as long as you don't unhighlight it in putty, at least it'll keep it copied, and then you could cd back, and you can just use that. So I can just go up, and I could have just done this backspace, and then you could right click. So it's just another trick when you have a longer directory that you're working with, you could do something like that. For number 8, for the command we're going to be working with is make dir, and make dir is pretty much just going to help you make new directories. So we can do dir, and it's going to list out all of my directories. So let's say I want to make a new one, so I can do make dir, and I'll do Barmine's files. I'm in the slash folder, and then if I dir it, you can see I have another subdirectory in there called Barmine's files. So just a nice way that you can make new folders anywhere you might want to do it. You might need to do sudo if you're in like a root folder like /etc, the bin, stuff like that. You're gonna have to use sudo, and that's because it is root owned files. So for number 9, we have rm. Rm is gonna be a command that you're gonna use a lot. It does have a couple different uses with it with the flags. So we can do dir to list out stuff. It's gonna list out all my directories inside of this slash directory, unless I want to remove Barmine's files, the directory that we just made. So rm Barmine's files, it actually won't work because it's a directory. So we would have to go back up, and we're going to do rm tac r, because it needs to be recursive to remove the whole directory. So if I do dir again, you can see Barmine's files isn't there anymore. So we'll just clear that out, and then I'll just touch a file real quick. So we'll do touch file. If I ls it, you can see that we have our file, and we're going to use rm to remove it. So I'll do rm file, and I'll ls it again, and now file is gone. File 1 is a different file, but file was the one we were working with, so you're able to remove it with rm. So locate's a really good command to be familiar with. It's something that I wish I knew earlier on. When I first got into Linux, I would get lost really easily and either not be able to find the files I was working with, or write them somewhere to a directory and just have no idea what I was working with. So if you actually go to use locate, originally it's not going to be installed typically, so you can just do apt install plocate, and I'm going to say yes, and now locate will get installed and we'll be able to use it. So I'll just finish that out real quick, and we're good to go. So if I go into home, you can see I have Barmine's file, so that's going to be the file we're going to look for. So I'm going to go back into the slash directory, and we're going to do locate Barmine's file, and you can see it's going to tell me right there it is in the home slash Barmine's file. So it's the file and that's the directory it's hidden in. Let's say if I want to do the fstat file, so we could do locate fstab. It's going to give you all of the locations where fstab is located. The one thing about locate is it can be a little tricky if you don't know like the directory you're working for that you're looking for. Like I know fstab is in Etsy, and if you've been watching the channel you probably know that too, but fstab could also be found in all these other locations. So if you maybe found something online and you don't know which one you're working with, try to narrow down the directory first before you use locate, because it could give you a bunch of different options that aren't what you're really looking for. But let's say you wrote a file like how I did, it's going to help you find it a lot easier, and you probably only have that file once. Okay, so for number 11 we're going to use the grep command. I know I kind of keep missing out on the numbers, but if you're following with the repo you can keep the track of the numbers. It's really helpful because it can help scan a file to find the keyword that you're looking for. So I have a file in here called names, and we're going to use grep to locate a name in here. So we're going to do grep honor slash home slash names, and you can see it went through the file and it found honor booth. So if I go into cat names, you can actually see that that was the name, and using grep I was able to just find it. I knew the keyword I was looking for and it gave me the whole line right there. So of course you can use grep with different things. If you have a script you're running, or maybe you're running logs and you have logs in Linux, you want to just quickly find a log, you know the keyword you're looking for, you can use grep to do something like that. Number 12, we're going to use the df command. So df will actually show the current disk space usage. So df normally isn't going to put out a very readable format. So if you're going to use df or du or any of the other commands that are similar to that, you want to use df tac h, and it actually puts it as a human readable format. So it's going to tell you the file system, it's going to tell you the size, what's used, what's available, and where it's actually mounted on. So super helpful. DF is really good if you're new to Linux, or even if you've been using Linux for a long time and you see that maybe your machine's running out of space and you're trying to narrow down what's taking up so much space. DF will list out all the file systems and show you what's doing what. So really good command to know. So at number 13 we have the chmod command, or chmod, or however you might say it. It's a good command to know because as you start messing with your file systems more and more, you might need to change it around so certain files or directories have different permissions. So a really common one that people will use, which isn't always really good because it can be exploited under malicious actors, is chmod 777. It pretty much gives the file or directory full permissions to be able to be read, write, or executed by any user. So if I was to make a file real quick, I'll do touch my file.txt. If I do ls tag l, we can see that my file.txt doesn't have a lot of permissions, but if I use chmod and then I do 777 my file.txt and then I do ls tag l one more time, you can see now it's green because it's executable and the permissions have changed all the way. It has originally didn't have all these permissions and now it does. So chmod is really helpful because you could do stuff like that. Next at 14 is similar to chmod, and it's going to be chown. So if we actually look over here originally, you can see my file.txt is owned by root. I don't have any other users on this account, on this machine, but you would use chown to change users. So we could use my example. It's root, and you can see it's going to be chown, and I would say the user that I want to have permission to own the file now, and then we would just say my file. And it's not going to change it because root already owns the files, but that's how you would change the permissions of the file, who owns it. So you would do stuff like this. Let's say you have you have two accounts on your Linux machine. You have your user account, and then there's always the root account. You might have root in the root directory with your user account, and now you're having some sort of permissions issue because root doesn't own it. You could use chown to actually change it so root does own that folder or file, and kind of alleviates the issues of the permissions. So chown can become really helpful, and let's get into the next one. So at number 15, our next command is going to be wget. Wget is really helpful because it's going to help you download files off the internet and it's not going to interfere with processes running. So we can use HTTP, HTTPS, and FTP. This is just an example. This doesn't exist, so don't try to wget it because it's not going to work. But let's say you want to run a Minecraft server, but you need the jar file. So you can come over to the site, copy the link, and then you could just wget, and then you would just paste the link. Mine didn't work. So after you get it, then you would just click enter, and then it's going to come through and it's going to download that file. So then you can see I have server.jar that I just downloaded from the Minecraft site. So here's a quick example of what you can do with wget. You can download almost anything that you find off the internet, whether it's files or stuff like that. Super helpful when you need to get files onto a machine that you maybe can't WinSCP into or anything like that. I like wget because it's convenient for stuff like this, but sometimes using WinSCP is easier because if you have access to like a machine to work off of to get onto your Linux machine. Usually you do, probably working off a VM or something similar, so WinSCP is really helpful in trying to transfer files just because sometimes wget has a little bit of a hiccup with it. But if not, stuff like this is super helpful with wget, like grabbing the Minecraft server file. At 16, we have the history command. The history command is super helpful, especially if you're working on a bunch of different projects, or you have a bunch of different commands you've been working with and you need to go back and run a command. You need to see what you ran 15 commands ago, but you forget the syntax. So history is actually going to give you up to about 500 commands, and you can see that these are all the ones. If the machine power cycles or anything like that, it's going to lose the history, but you can see that these are all the commands that I've ran so far since this machine's on. This is a Linode machine that I just spun up before the video, so you can see it doesn't have a ton yet, but history is super helpful, and then you can actually run commands off of it if you need, and you just copy them and go through again. So it's really helpful to have, and I use this at work when I'm configuring devices because sometimes I forget the syntax of the command or which version I ran, so having history is really helpful. Our next command is going to be the man command. So man is short for manual, and if you're running certain commands or processes, usually they have a manual built into it. So let's see if I want to do like man nmap. It's going to give me the manual of how to use nmap, and you could actually scroll through. I use the spacebar to scroll through, and it's going to give you all the documentation of how to use nmap. If you are going through this and you find the part you need and you don't want to keep hitting space, you can just hit Q and it'll quit and close out the manual. But like I said, so man will actually work with a bunch of different commands, and it's going to give you the manual for how to use that command. Super helpful if you don't have access to the internet off another machine. You only have your CLI Ubuntu machine and you need to know how to use a command. It sometimes a little tricky because the syntax in the manual might be confusing, but if you have nothing, it works really good. So our next command at 18 is going to be the zip and unzip command. I use these interchangeably for 18. So I actually have a couple files in here already. I have file 1 and file 2. I already zipped file 1, so now we're going to zip file 2. So let's say I want to zip file 1, file 2, so I'm going to do file 2.zip, and I'll do file 2. And you see it add the file, and if I ls again, now I have file 2 and zip.zip. So I can do unzip file 2, and we're going to replace it, and there we go. So now I have file 2 again. So that's how you would zip and unzip folders. You could also do it if you have like tar files you're downloading off the internet with wget, and you need to extract them so you could start working with them. So it's another one you would use. So coming in at user 19, it will give you user add. User add is a quick way to add a user, and it has different options to do it. So you can man it, and it'll give you all the different ways to add a user. I'm just going to do it quickly with the default way, so I just do user add Barmine 2. And you can see it made it, and it's not going to give you any confirmation, so we'll just do ls to the etc/password file. And we can see in there, cat. We need to cat it, not to ls it. So we'll do etc/password again. And you can see here at the bottom of the folder, it's our new username that we just wrote in. So we could do it that way. So then we'll do clear. And at 20 is the password command. So password is going to help you reset it. So I'm going to do password barmine2. And it's going to ask you for a new password. So I'll just enter that in. We retype it. And that's how you would change your passwords. So I want to do it for the root account. We can do it like that. So I'll do password root. And it's going to ask for a new root password. and we'll do it again, and that's how you reset passwords with the password command. I know we went over a lot of different commands, but 20 commands is not a lot when it comes to Linux. There's tons of different ones to use, and way more than I covered in this video. Having these commands down and being familiar with them at least is super helpful, especially if you're new to running a command line version of Linux, whether it's Ubuntu server or any other flavor, or you're just, a seasoned veteran with Ubuntu or any of the other distros, and maybe there's a couple commands that you didn't know. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and maybe check out some of my other videos. I have a lot of other Linux videos and different projects that I work on, and I also have a Discord server, so make sure to join that. I'll put a link in the description. We can sit there, we can chat about projects or help each other with anything we might be working on, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.